We had one particular story. It was a Jadakiss song, Smoking Guns. We played it maybe a year ago for a young lady. She got up and walked out. After the group was over, we went to connect with her and say, so what's going on? She said, that song speaks to my story. And she said, I've never told my story. Once again, like I said, sometimes you can't put things into words. Sometimes music is the way they communicate. There's I can't tell you, but you know what? We were like, what song do you want to listen to? And when you listen to it, your heart pours for them. It pours because you're like, wow, this young person sitting there looking like have it all together, but on the inside, they're tearing up.
Peace and love. Thank you for joining me today on Hip Hop Can Save America. This is another one of the long overdue ones. People have been out here doing this work for quite a long time, and I'm still slow to catch up to everyone and get everyone here. But thank you for taking the time to rock with me. Long overdue. Please do me a favor. I could read your bios, and all these things change on a day-to-day because sometimes we're doing something today we didn't do yesterday. Please introduce yourselves as you would like yourself presented to the world in the context of why we're talking today.
Absolutely. My name is Yocasta Jimenez. I'm better known as Miss Yogi, the hip hop therapist. I am the founder and CEO of this here Teens Under Construction, the home of hip hop therapy. And that's what we do. We do hip hop therapy. We bring hip hop throughout the state. And whenever it takes us out of state, that's even better. We've done work, we're currently doing work with the Department of Corrections. We do work with the Department of Social Services, a lot of juvenile justice programs that we do. And it's really utilizing hip hop as a cultural connection with a lot of the folks that we work with.
Top of the evening, everyone, brother. Thank you for having us. My name is Shamar. I'm the vice president of Teams Under Construction. Hip hop is more than just music. It's a culture, it's a language. This is why we do the work. As two licensed social workers, this is prevalent in the work that we do in and outside of everyday work. Something Yogi want to add as well is that we also do a lot of community outreach. We do a free store in the community every year. We do back to school drive. We do sneaker drive. You name it, we out there. We do this work because we love what we do.
Yes, indeed. Y'all got your elevator pitches down pat, man. Listen, let me tell you. You can tell you've been doing this for a minute. So let's start at the not the end, but start at the current. I do want to hear about what some of the stuff that you do on, that you just rattled off some of the programming and some of the actual things you do. And then we'll talk a little bit about maybe how we got here. But for those who are the uninitiated, don't understand, first of all, you said y'all community, y'all state, where you at? Where you repping?
So I originally repped the BX because that's where we're from.
Okay.
That's where hip hop started, so we could never leave home alone.
Fair enough.
But I currently reside upstate, which is, that's like a boohoo for Bronx. But I had to go where I can afford, and upstate was where it was at.
Yeah, all right. Maybe the new mayor will fix some of that. Go on. Right, though. Well, I'm a Long Island guy, so I always get the it's not as bad as upstate though. So let's go Strong Island in effect.
Right, you're right. Strong Island.
But I did the thing that New Yorkers do when I moved to Atlanta, so I get it. It's all good. Everything happens.
Yeah.
So tell me what goes on wherever you're setting up shop. Obviously, like you said, all around the state, in the juvenile detention centers, in the institutional spaces, what that looks like from a programming level to folks who don't even. I'll never know who stumbles onto this. Say hip hop and therapy, yeah, that makes perfect sense. We know all about it. Or those words don't belong together. So to someone who maybe, is coming here like, I don't really understand this concept just off jump, what is some of the things that you do where you do blend the music, the culture, and, the sensibilities and the ethos into traditional, like I said, y'all are SLC, the thing.
Yeah. Acronym.
Right. So as traditionally trained, right, but also from the culture, how do y'all put those things together, and what does that look like on a day-to-day basis, or a couple examples of what that looks like?
So I'll talk a little bit about the work that we do at DOC, and I'll let Shamar share a little bit of the work that we do directly with the youth. So hip hop is a way to connect with people, right? I often say that depression existed in hip hop before we were allowed to be depressed, right? We come from an era where mental health, for lack of better terms, wasn't allowed, right? Like you couldn't just go and tell your parents, I'm depressed. Like you have to have a reason to be depressed. But we could go back.
I'll give you something to be depressed about.
Distance, the bills, right? Like you need to be nervous, right? So it's really touchy, especially for urban communities, right, where we don't talk about our business outside. And I always joke that, what happens in this house stays in this house, and then you send us to therapy, and we're sitting there like, I'm not supposed to say what happened in the house, right?
Right.
So, but I often talk about how depression has existed within hip hop since way back when, right? That's how it started, right? People telling their stories, the CNN of the Black community. So we really hone into that. We play tracks like Naughty by Nature's Everything's Gonna Be Okay. We talk about Ghetto Boys, My Mind is Playing Tricks on Me. The title of the song in itself is talking about mental health. And when you go through the lyrics, right, when he's saying, I often drift when I drive, having thoughts of suicide, right? That connects directly to mental health and what we talk about. He talks about paranoia. He talks about getting kicked out the house. He talks about how he deals with his lady based on what he's doing. And so we've just taken and really honed that in. And it's like, this is how we've been telling our story. This has been therapy since day one. We just never really honed into looking at it as therapy because therapy is such a taboo.
Yeah. So it makes sense to us because we're from, and we know this, and we were, like you said, listening to songs like that and already getting the gems without it being told, without us knowing what we're doing, right? But inherently, we knew that this what was doing to us was we were listening as we were growing up, and so young people, same thing. They're getting it through the music, but they're not realizing that that's actual. Like you said, it was therapy to us, but we don't look at it that way. So, what do some of the parallels between sort of traditional training, the real nerdy stuff that y'all had to, go to school for, and how that translates? And so you can listen to lyrics, and I get that that's sort of on a cursory level. It makes sense. You're hearing people. You're not alone. Representation matters. You're getting it from, that this exists out in the world. It's not just you. What does that do from a clinical standpoint that most people don't? Not to say most people, but a lot of people don't look at music, and especially hip hop and rap, as being capable of doing?
So that's a phenomenal question. One of the things that we often have to express when we explain hip hop therapy is that you see the word hip hop, oftentimes people, they negate therapy, right? It's all about, hip hop. Every time we do a presentation, before we start presenting, people think we're either, we're MCs, we're going to actually sign up, we're music producers, and it's like, we're clinicians. We go over the elements of hip hop, we break it down, right? And hip hop therapy, it teaches you about emotional regulation, how to regulate these emotions that you're going through. Oftentimes, one of our downfalls as adults, when young people are listening to music, we often say, "Oh, that's not real music."
Right.
And people used to say that about our music, right? But there's a message in the music, so it's about analyzing it. It's about breaking it down. So as clinicians, we use music as a conduit to those conversations about mental health, about telling their story, right? About narrating. So you think about it, about an MC. What is an MC doing? Telling their story. And it's about connecting, like, oh my goodness, someone is saying how I feel, but I can't necessarily put it into words, but they're saying it for me. And we're able to explore that. And like I said, hip hop talks about community. It talks about struggle, but it also talks about empowerment. It talks about resilience. It tells a story, and oftentimes as adults, we have to get comfortable with having these uncomfortable conversations with young people and even young adults, right? Because if it's not addressed as a kid, it manifests into adulthood.
That's right.
And that's how trauma continues because we don't address it when we're younger. So we address it through the music, through the art of graffiti, through the art of breakdancing, and the art of emceeing with our young people.
And I'll just add to that, right? That rhythm helps regulate breathing, which helps regulate the nervous system, right? And I think we're actually doing a workshop tomorrow morning where we're doing a mindfulness exercise. And nobody thinks about hip hop when you think about mindfulness, but we're having mindfulness to a hip hop song because it's doable.
Right. I mean that, and I've talked about this, on the show before, but sort of the idea of it's what's the word? Not psychosomatic. I'm not smart enough to say words like that. It make you feel good. It makes you settle down. I make beats. I'm a DJ. Like sometimes that repetitive beats, the repetition. We've talked about it a couple times where it creates a sense of calm. It creates a sense of structure. And for folks that are like that triggers something in their mind that settles them down, like you said, regulates emotion. Mm-hmm. That's what we get naturally when we mess with music like that.
Absolutely.
You're a DJ, so DJ, that's a skill that you have, right? So let's think of clinically for a second. Yeah. What's the one skill you need as a DJ? What does a DJ need to have?
Hand-eye coordination, a sense of rhythm.
So when you're at a party, right? You know, your
Yeah.
party jumping. You have to be able to read the crowd.
Oh,
You
in
have to
a
have
live situation. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Right. Right.
Yeah.
That's I guess that's social emotional learning.
Emotional learning. Come on, man. You got it.
Emotional intelligence.
Right. Emotional intelligence. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Same thing with the cipher. We've had Tony Blackman. We've had people talk about the cipher in depth, and it's like you don't raise your hand to go in the cipher. You just know when to go in the cipher. It's a collective communal understanding that happens without words, without instruction manuals, and it's something that if we apply to other areas of our lives, which is the whole key to all of this stuff, is that the lessons we learned from hip hop are transferable into these other sectors. To your point earlier, and I've said this many times, but again, never know who's a first time watcher. I often joke that like back in the days, some of the older hip hop heads, look at the younger hip hop heads and their type of music, and obviously we don't align and whatever. I've heard this said, you've heard this said. I'm sure somebody watching or listening has heard this said. We used to rap about selling drugs, man. All these kids rap about is taking drugs.
Yeah.
And so watch Twitch, I'll be like, well, the first was better. Like it's, what are we doing? But also I think the idea, the implication there is that, well, these kids today are soft. They live in a soft life. It was hard and rugged when we were living and life is soft right now. And I'm like, I don't know that I would look at my kid, my young daughter or son that for some reason connects to an artist who's rapping or singing about self-medicating, going through these feelings, which you hear more in music now than you did back in our days. And my kid is connecting to that artist for some reason. I think it would behoove me as a parent to not say, your music sucks and walk out the door.
Yeah.
It might help if I just be like, hey, man, what's wrong?
Yep. And you know what? When we do parent workshops, we talk about that, right? We have a parent workshop called Reading Between the Lyrics. And it's like if he's listening to Juice WRLD and how he would say, right, I'm taking these prescriptions and I'm staying in my room. And even when Meek Mill says, right, I'm no PTSD, the pills keep it at ease, right? This is the same thing that these are discussions we're having with young people, right? If you have these in your ears all day and that's what you continuously repeat, there's a connection there. And it's important for us as adults to just take a minute sometimes and listen to what young people are listening to. Because it'll open our eyes and gives us a sense of what they might be going through, what they might be experiencing.
When you bring this to young folk, especially, again, either in schools or in institutional spaces or in, like you said, Department of Corrections, what do you see, what benefit does that have to them that they're not getting from other programs that's supposed to help them or, lack of that sort of thing altogether, which happens a lot? What are they getting specifically from hip hop based therapy? The stuff y'all doing, like, you could tell me holistically or you could tell me specifically. What's something you see that they're benefiting from this directly?
So I'm gonna give you two and I'm gonna let Shamar give you two because I can be long, right? So
okay. Well,
so I'm gonna focus on what we do at DOC, right? At the Department of Corrections. It brings them a sense of belonging, right? And it gives them a sense of being able to express themselves in a space where they're not going to be judged because we are all alike in one way or another. And hip hop brings us together, right? So to your point, and shout outs to you, right? Hip hop can save America, right? So what we do is that we really allow them to utilize music and the connection to express themselves and to remind them that just because they're men doesn't mean that they're emotionless, which is what society has often said, right? So to your point, if as a male you cry, you're weak, right? If you're not doing what we identify as manly stuff, now you're considered a weak. That's considered weak for your trait. And when we conclude at the Department of Correction, we finish with a cipher. And to me, the cipher is always what takes us overtime. The CEO is like, yo, y'all gotta go. And I'm like, wait, what more person gotta go, right? Right now we have this Jamaican gentleman he gets into it, and I don't want to leave the jail. And everybody wants to leave jail, right? But freestyling gives you control, right? And I think in that moment they feel in control where they can share how they're saying, and everybody's just cheering on. And I'll let Shamar pick up from there.
To Yogi's point, is about connecting and telling your story without the borders, right? You're not judging. And it's funny because one of the questions we always ask, no matter we work with young men and young women, we ask them, what are your thoughts about therapy? Sometimes I don't believe it doesn't work. They don't realize what we're doing is therapeutic. And like when they're expressing themselves It was a young brother we worked with last week, and he said, "Well, I don't believe in therapy because they just there to get a paycheck. No one believes in me. No one cares about me. They're not really genuine." And then he goes off on telling his story. And at the end, we're talking, this was therapy. He's like, "No, was it? I was talking." I was like, "I know."
It's called talk therapy.
People are like mind blown because he may not be sitting in the suit and everything. And how does that make you feel? It's untraditional. And we still get the work done. It's about seeing people where they're at and also understanding that we are not the expert of your life. We're never going to promise you and say, "Hey, it's going to be okay," because we don't know that. We don't have that much power. We can say, "Hey, we're going to help you get there." But to say that it's going to be okay when you walk out of here, that's a huge task and a promise to make that we make sure that we don't create.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, that's a very real, way of approaching it. And I guess real recognize real, even if they don't recognize what they're really doing, it's, medicine in the applesauce, you know how it is.
Right.
But and I've started to think about this a lot more. I mean, I've always thought this, and again, what I love about the work that y'all do and so many people that talk to on the show, one of the things like a real superpower is that y'all help translate what hip hop heads or what folks who are just engaged in the culture, don't even have to be an artist but just, surrounded by the culture, what we do naturally, right? We just do, like I said, the cipher, the emotional intelligence, all that stuff. It comes naturally. And then you get put into these situations where it's, I want to bring the idea of hip hop into therapy. And it makes people think that hip hop makes hip hop makes therapy better. But I like to think of it as hip hop is already therapy. Right? It's not making therapy. I mean, it is. It's making like traditional therapy better, I guess, because you're able to do things you're able to affect folks in these settings that it's non-traditional, right? But it's not that it makes it better. It's just that it's a whole different thing in of itself. Does that make sense? Is that how I'm looking at it, right? And how we should be positioning this?
I do. I think so. Like I said, I think that our therapy initially was hip hop, right? We came out, we told our stories. I mean, I automatically start thinking of quotes that's at 80% verses in my head. But I think about, what was their name when they said, 40, Wu-Tang, 40 of us in the back of a bus, life shouldn't be so, right? When we think about Old Dirty Bastard, when we think about them talking about how they were smoking wounds in the cemeteries at the age of 14, right? That was them expressing themselves. This is exactly the conversation you will have with me in therapy. Only that in therapy, I'm going to be able to build you with some skills so that you don't have to turn to smoking wounds at the age of 14, right? That you have a different angle, that you have a different skill to address it. What hip hop does for us is really open up the space for us to be able to have a conversation and teach you those skills without you feeling so honed into the therapeutic space, right? And to me, therapy, it was just a way of taking hip hop and making it cohesive, right? So that the insurance can pay for you to get therapy because they're not going to pay for you to go to the studio booth, right?
That's right.
Or when they come see us, we take them to the studio booth, right? And so I think that's just like a conduit of how that went, right? It was hip hop. Hip hop opened up some doors. And then we took the therapy and said, you know what, these skills are important. If these things that we're teaching in conventional therapy are important, so how do we utilize that to continue the work through that hip hop already started?
Where in your personal journeys which the chicken or the egg did like hip hop, like did you recognize hip hop as a therapeutic thing and then say, now I want to get into therapy? Or did you somehow get into therapy and then realize, I could work these angles? Like what got you into this path?
So what got me into this path, I always say that my lifelong journey has been impacted by the way I was raised. I'm from Hunts Point in the South Bronx. Okay. And so therapy was not even a word that I knew growing up. And people laugh and I'm like, I'm dead serious. Like we didn't talk about therapy. Therapy wasn't a discussion. I went through some trials and tribulations. I dropped out of high school when I was in 9th grade. I had my first kid by 15, my second one by 17. Story continues, spent some time being homeless. Went back to doing what I did, being out in the streets, which cost me some time being locked up. And even though I've always loved music, it wasn't until that moment, right? And we often have this discussion with the incarcerated individuals that I didn't have a time to sit down and think about life, right? And at that time, the song that kept playing and I really started listening and paying attention to was "What About Your Friends" from TLC, right? And that verse, right? What about your friends? Will they be there proud? Will they stand, or will they let you down again? And when you're locked up, you start to recognize who's going to be around and who's not, right?
For sure.
And just be from the hood, you come home and everybody has, and just in transparency, everybody has a bottle, everybody has a blunt to give you, but no one has nothing good. Nobody says, yo, get out the streets, right? Nobody says, yo, here's somebody to help you with a resume. Go get a job instead of doing this, right? But they're ready to pop bottles, light up blunts and stuff like that. And so I realized that, wow, the only thing I have is music. And as I went into my social work career, because I like hoodies and jeans, I didn't feel like I fit there neither. Everybody was suited and booted. And I'm like, this don't feel right for me. And I say, you know what? We're going to do something different and we're going to do what works, and hip hop works. And so, voila.
There you go.
So for me, hip hop was more about telling a story. I remember just working my early career, had to be suited, booted, dressed up, and hip hop was that outlet. It was that, from 9 to 5 is over. Now you put that music on, and now you get to be your true, authentic self without worrying about being judged.
Right. Right.
And that's the story for me for hip hop, because growing up in the Bronx, growing up on Gunnell, it was therapeutic. It was music, but people often, to your point, music is healing and therapeutic. It's not just hip hop, right? Any genre of music you listen to, it's about connecting and telling a story. And as a man growing up, sometimes you wear that mask, and wearing that mask, you don't show your vulnerability. And you're like, wow, nobody understands what you're truly going through. But you put on that certain song that resonates with you and it motivates you, and you take the message from the song, and the message is the healing part. You don't have to sit in front of a clinician for therapy.
Right.
You can sit in front
Right. You have to be preached. You have to be preached to. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was preaching. He was really preaching for sure. Yeah. And again, I remember this growing up, and I'm about I might be a little older, but I'm about the same age as hip hop. Grew up, parallel to it. I'm in Long Island, so every Friday night, Saturday night, Mr. Magic and Red Alert on the radio, and we're in my man Craig basement, and we're just, and then so when those moments happen, when those songs come on, that not just party songs, even sometimes the party songs, like there'll be something that clicks, and you'll turn to your friend, and your friend will be like, yo, that was an ill line, or that was same thing happened to me. And you have these moments where it's starting to help create those conversations.
Yeah.
Create those conversations. And you get that from all kind of music. But I feel like hip hop just has always had this more of a communal kind of thing, more of a each one teach one presence, more of a, we've got our own thing, here, and it's a safe space here. And plus, I always say with hip hop, like we got so many words per square inch than any other genre of music. You just got more things that could be expressed, more stuff that can be talked about. And I mean, you're not going to find another genre that got songs about picking boogers, bro. Like there's so much content, and so it just, there's so many lanes to choose from when you're trying to say, hey, where can I find ways to relate through this genre?
Absolutely. And I even talk about the positive and the negative, right? It doesn't matter what song you hear. We could talk about like Slippin', right? And still the chorus of his song says, I still got to get up and, I tear stuff up, right? So he's talking about how dark his life is. He's still talking about the resilience piece, which we as clinicians preach, right? Building that resiliency and being able to bounce back from things. And so we utilize moments like that and bars like that to really hone in on that. And I think for a lot of folks, it doesn't matter what song we play, there's a way to connect to it, right? We can go all the way back to Slick Rick and play a children's story, and everybody's there like, yeah, I got with a kid that, that took the wrong path, and this is where I ended up at.
Yeah, for sure. How much do you get to, and again, we talked about this earlier about like sort of the newer music. So young kids, that are, I know you probably you got to stay tuned in. And by the way, with all that I said before, some of the music sucks. I get it. I understand. But again, but some of it doesn't, you know what I mean? To be honest. And so we have to stay, open-minded and stay plugged into what our kids, I got a 10-year-old, I got an 11-year-old. I know about 6, 7. I know all this stuff before, you know what I mean? Come on now. I get all this and I stay tuned. I've had kids from, it was great. I had kids like in like different generations. So I've always been able to stay up on things. But I think we have to make an effort as parents to do that. Certainly as folks that are in I would say in charge of kids, but like when you have young people in your care, so how do you do that? How do you stay tuned in? Do you search the internet? Do you watch, some of these podcasts? Do you talk to how do you stay up on it? Because we always preach it. I tell all the time, the adults, we got to stay on top of what these kids are into. How do you do that? What's a good way to do that?
I'll give a quick one. So 2 years ago, last year, we were asked to go to Rochester, like 2 years in a row, to do a workshop with the high school students on drill music. But we both looked at each other like, all right, we're going to have to but you got to go to the lab. We had to play the drill music. We had to ask them, what are they listening to? Even with the DOC, when we work with the boot camp, the young cats, we got to say, okay, what are you listening to? Because there's some stuff we haven't heard. So 100%. We got to sit there and we got to become a student again and say, okay, why are they listening to this? What's the message? And that's how we get into it. So we ask them, like I said, we don't come in as experts. We want to know why you listen to it, what's connecting you to that music, and what stands out. I mean, the music, the song's only like 2 minutes anyway.
Yeah, it's true. It's funny.
I got she gave me a song, it was like 1 minute and 36 seconds. I was like, wait, I have to hear it again. I think I missed the message. Right. So, but we get a list of songs and we listen to them and we try to connect too.
As seasoned individuals that we are, when we're talking to, again, young kids, teens and such, and their music, and you do that, you start listening to things. Do you have an example of like something that I can give you one, but I want to see if you have where like you didn't realize the depth of something that they were listening. Maybe we kind of don't see it. We see it at a surface level, and then they explain it to us, and it's like, oh, and it gives us some real insight into how our young folks are looking at the world.
Well, I think on that perspective, right? If you go on my playlist, is everything old school, right? Everything from
I know.
Right. So what I think was a standout for me, I think it was a song by Leaf Ward, right? Because I'm not really listening to it. So I think the voila moment was that moment when somebody said, play this song, and it was a drill song. And we actually took the time out to listen and to understand why they connected to that song, right? Rod Wave was another one, right? And the other part of that, right, is that even if we turn on the radio or we listen to drill, what the radio is playing is not necessarily what the album is about. They just take that one song that's gonna make you come back to listen to the radio. But we don't do like back in the days. We don't listen to every song and pull out the big rollout thing to read the words, right? So that doesn't happen anymore. And so I think that to me that was the moment. Like now I got like the Rod Wave in my playlist. I got some before. I got some folks that names I probably can't remember right now. But I'm like, I'll listen to this track.
We had one particular story. It was a Jadakiss song, "Smoking Guns." We did we played it maybe a year ago for a young lady. She got up and walked out, and she did, like, after the group was over, we went to connect with her and say, "So what's going on?" She said, "That song that song speaks to my story." And she said, "I've never told my story, but that song told my story." And once again, like I said, sometimes you can't put things into words. When we see students one-on-one or young people one-on-one, when we have these conversations, sometimes music is the way they communicate.
Right.
They can't put the words out there. They want to. They say, I can't tell you, but you know what? We be like, what song do you want to listen to? And when you listen to it, your heart pours for them. It pours because you're like, wow, this young person sitting there looking like have it all together, but on the inside, they're tearing up.
Right.
That was
that's dope. Yeah. And they're giving you like a little, like, just here, listen to this.
Yes.
Yeah. I can't just that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So the example I have is sort of like that. My son is old, he's in his 30s. It's a few years ago. It was and again, pardon anyone who's heard me tell this story, but it's actually, it was a very big moment for me too. And it was Super Gremlin. The song Super Gremlin was out, right? And I'm like, all right, whatever. I hear it. It's on the radio. It's all over the place. And I'm like, I don't like Kodak. I don't like it. It's whatever. I'm not into it. But I hear it and I'm like, all right, I know it exists and I know it's popular. And I guess that year, Big Lotto was out and she had a song called Big Dick Energy. Okay. And it was like a VMAs or a BET, whatever awards. And they were kind of up in the same category for like Song of the Year. And Big Lotto won. And I remember saying something to my son, who's a little bit more like, from the cut. You know, he's not a big party guy. He's definitely a super gremlin type listener. And I was like, nah, yeah, that makes sense. It was an upbeat song. It was like the song of the summer. A lot of people, vibing to it. There was in the clubs, it was in the parties. He's like, nah, man, that song is stupid. I'm like, all right, but that song is stupid. He's like, no, it's not, man. And I'm like, tell me why it's not stupid. And he starts telling me, and again, like, I hadn't really paid attention to the damn song. And this why, it's my fault. He goes, look, man, it's about, look, man, it's, his man and them, they come up together, like they come from the street, they doing the same thing, and then, they do everything together, they help each other out, they get famous, and then one start acting funny, the other one starts blaming the other one for all the stuff. And it's a whole, and now we not cool no more, and da-da-da. And he breaks down this whole story of what's essentially like a breach of trust, right? A loyalty issue, right? Something that he didn't find, a friendship that was broken up. And he didn't have to tell me like that there's something in his life that resonate. That's why because somebody was disloyal to him. Something like, I could see that there was something there. So did two things. Number one, it let me know that, all right, some of these songs are actually saying something, even though legitimately we can't understand what they're saying half the time. And that's just because we have a different dialect. We're older. We don't listen. We're not from the same, part of the country. And, to say that, mumble rap is unintelligible, is kind of, it's kind of messed up sometimes. It can be viewed as some folks who say it's almost prejudicial. It's almost racist to just say that these folks are talking this way. You can't understand them. But if you listen to what's behind the songs, kids listen. They know what they're saying. These are words. These are human beings saying words. And it gave me an idea of what was valuable to my son that he never had expressed to me in 30-something years of living. And he was like, nah, he didn't say to me, hey, Dad, just by the way, loyalty. Big for me. Like, he didn't say that. We never had that conversation, but delving into his musical tastes and finally getting that out of him. Now I learned something about him that day. And how else would I have known that? So I definitely look at this as being a necessity for us to do as older folks.
I think another benefit that we have is that we work in a high school, right, during the day. So we have like very long days. We start at the high school at 7 a.m. We're out of there by 2:45. We might be running like an after-school program, doing some hip-hop therapy from 3:30 to 4:30. And then we jet over to the Department of Corrections and work with grown men from 6 to 7, right? And it's all hip-hop induced. And on my way there, I'm listening to hip-hop, right? So I think because we stay so grounded in working with young people, we get to stay in the loop, to your point, right? With the lingo. And I tell people, they're like, I don't understand that. I'm like, so pull up the lyrics and read them, right? If you don't understand it, and once you read the lyrics, you start to understand the mumble, right?
I bet you if you just handed them lyrics and they never heard the song, and then they heard the song, they'd be like, that's not the same song. But these are words. They're saying things.
And there'll be content in like 2 bars, and it'll just blow your mind. And I think it's important to do that. 2 years ago, I had a young lady stop by my office, and I'm not her school social worker. This other lady at the time was, and she said to me, Miss, what do you mean by hip hop therapist? So I explained to her how hip hop is my thing and how I use it to connect. And she came back about 2 periods later with a little piece of paper and 2 songs written on it, right? And they weren't hip hop songs; they were more like pop music. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna sit through these and I'm gonna read the lyrics. And one of them was "Boys Will Be Boys." And in this song, the lady's talking about how boys could be so reckless, but women always being told to cover up, to not be outside in the dark. And it's talking about the unfairness of that and how we're taught all these things to do to avoid it, but how men aren't being told how to behave properly towards a young lady, right? And the song absolutely blew my mind. And I'm like, wow, this young lady has been through something. So I went to that clinician and I said, I need you to listen to these 2 songs, and when you're done, come to me. I have something to tell you. And she did, and she came back to me, and I said, this was your student that came and gave me those songs. You have some work to do. And I think at that moment, that clinician also understood the power that hip hop can have on therapy.
Yeah. All right, now those are some real testimonies right there. Testify. Come on. Now let's look at this kind of holistically. You're not you're doing great work. You're in the schools. You've got some institutional support. We see that in certain parts of the country, particularly, they're trying to make what you do less prevalent in schools and institutions. So it's important to have like you have nonprofits and, you're kind of a standalone organization so that you're able to, do the Saturday school kind of model if you have to, if they, kick you out of enough schools. What do you see, generally speaking, industry-wide, that either, I don't know, hinders, what pushback have y'all gotten, if any, like when trying to take this programming to some places that don't fully get it or because a lot of people trying to do this kind of work and they get smacked down sometimes or they don't know how to approach. What are, I guess, some ways that you've been able to get places that maybe don't have that, don't know what hip hop therapist means, but are at least open-minded enough to hear your pitch? What are you seeing industry-wide overall? Is this becoming easier to do? Was it becoming easier to do until a few things happened, this past year? What's the state of the hip hop therapy union?
I have to say, and I don't know if you agree with me, but you could definitely put in. I would say, I don't think that we've actually encountered doors closing. I actually think that when we come to the table, people are so intrigued by the fact that we're licensed, clinicians, and that we're utilizing this method to connect with kids. I think it makes a lot of folks that we've encountered very curious, right? Like we presented to the school social worker of what is it, School Social Workers of America Association, right, in Utah, right? And it was very well received, right? We play some music, we play a versus game, so we let everybody try it, right? And I think that's the part, is allowing people to feel inclusive and understanding that hip hop is not just for Black folks, right? And I think opening those doors and helping them understand what hip hop is, where it came from, and to me, the geniuses that hip hop is, and how much of a genius the people that created it were, right? Just about even coming to the basketball court and getting light from the light pole. That was genius. That's another question right there, right? So really,
I do a whole PD on tech and hip hop, and just goes back to all the engineering from Grandmaster Flash redesigning turntables, and like there's so much brilliance. But
so I think when we come into the spaces and we're able to educate on what hip hop is and the strengths of hip hop, even listening to Biggie Smalls Juicy when he's talking about intersections and what sells here and what sells there, right? Like this is brilliant, right? And I think that when we open that door to that brilliance, I think that allows people to stop and listen for a minute. And once we got their ear, right, we become like contagious. Like now you like addictive. Now, like I'm not gonna let you not like me now. We presented in rooms where everybody was in a suit and tie, and we came in Timbs and hoodies, right? And we're
100%.
talking. Like, we're talking to like judges and lawyers, and they're looking at us like, what do these people got to bring to the table? And I'm like, you hang on tight. We got a surprise for you, right? So I think mostly, and then we work in a school district. So even when we show up and we're like, we're doing this work and we're already doing these work in the school district, what we've experienced from that, have more school districts come in and say, hey, can you come down and do an assembly?
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I'm glad to see that. And again, you're in New York, so, it's not like you're in Florida, because that ain't happening there. You know what I mean? But it's promising that under the right, under the right circumstances, under the right, when you have the right support, that, and again, look, I do the same thing. You've seen me out in the world presenting and, and doing things. I do the same thing. I love being the only hip hop person in the room, because you're going to learn today, and I'm going to bring all y'all with me, because I'm just going to, I bet you better take notes, because I'm about to drop 50 names of people doing brilliant work that you're going to not even know, existed before this moment. So I get that. And that's promising. And I'm glad that these opportunities are happening. How do you guard against, I guess, again, I'm thinking holistically, because I know that people watch what you're doing and saying, I'm trying to figure out my way to do similar kind of work. So I'm kind of saying, for those who might be looking to get into this line of work or whatever, how do you guard against inauthenticity, or like folks who are, not using the culture in a, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Like we might be using it in a disingenuous way, just to make it a gimmick, or just to try to do what y'all doing without actually doing what y'all doing.
So the young people that you work with, kids know real from fake, right? From phony. So just being authentic in the work that we do. And one of the key questions we always like to ask young folks, even adults we enter the room with, that say they're working with young people, when we tell them you want to be effective with your young people, get to know your young people. Don't come there and tell them this is what you need to do. No. Because it's nothing. What happens often, the message is that, oh, this kid is bad. And it's like, what's wrong with you? It's not what's wrong with you. It's what happened to you, right? What did you go through? And it's about being able to listen to the young people and know that they're going to know if you're phony and if you're real. And we have these conversations. We tell the young adults and we tell adults, you got to get comfortable with your young people. Get out of your lane. Don't say that you can't connect with them because you don't look like them. That's an absolutely false narrative, and it's an easy cop-out. Yes, you may not know their struggle. You may not know the strength that they're going through, but it doesn't mean that you can't listen and want to genuinely learn. So when we show up to the room, we show up as ourselves. So we create the energy. You know, sometimes in the room, you shape it, we create the energy from when we walk into any room.
Yeah, that's a valuable lesson to learn, that you can be involved in this, even though you're not of, by, for the culture itself directly. You know, plenty of people are doing it, but it's a matter of how you approach it with intent, right? With intent and purpose.
Yeah.
And learning from brilliant practitioners like yourselves that are leading the way.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me what's on the agenda. You know, what do y'all, you know, is it steady work? Is it, you know, are you doing things, are you looking to expand, or, you know, what is it that's happening now, and where would you like to take the work that you do moving forward, if you had all the, you know,
or the funds in the world.
That genie bottle. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's usually where it comes down to, right?
Yeah. They gotta get it. The funds. Generally, I think we're in a good space, right? We are a grass, organization, right? Grassroots organization. We do the work, we put the work in, we do everything from the CEO to the janitor and everything in between. We handle it. But I think ultimately right now we are absolutely booked and busy, right? We have after school programs, we have the DOC, we do retreats with young folks. We do conferences. We actually have Roxanne Shante speak at one of our young lady conferences, where she really talked about her deal with relationships. And, we all, well, at least most of us know Roxanne's story, where,
right.
She was very poorly treated by her partner. And I think that even bringing people like her to the floor really allows kids to see that, wow, like, this is a real thing. So we want to continue to expand doing that. Actually, we were talking and discussing with some folks at Yonkers doing a talent show / fashion show, right? Because fashion is part of the culture, it's part of hip hop. So maybe allowing young folks to come out and share their talent. And we don't hone them into what they can and cannot do, but we do stress to them to bring that to the platform, right? What you've learned in therapy, what you get from therapy, what you get from hip hop, and they really hone in on writing their bars around that. And so we just continue to, we're actually presenting for the National Association of Social Workers here in New York in May about hip hop therapy. So when you ask, do we want to expand? I want to expand this to everybody. I want everybody to know about hip hop therapy. And in the past, I had someone say to me, and I had to take a step back because I was still I had to stay my professional self. And her statement to me was, well, what if hip hop is not in my lane? I was like, I said, we're not in this profession to be in our lane. We're in this profession to be in their lane.
Their lane.
And if you are not a hip hop person and you utilize hip hop in a session with a young person, you're letting that person know that you're open to knowing all about them, their experience, their culture, what they connect to. So you don't have to love it, but be open-minded to understanding it. And I think that those are a lot of the pieces when we talk about expanding. When we talk to these clinicians in these big spaces, right, we really hone into that. Because I think a lot of people feel like, well, if I don't do hip-hop, I can't do this. And it's like, no, I think you can learn a little bit from hip-hop just because that's the way you're thinking.
And I guess as far as the community initiatives for 2026, we're doing another free store. Like we said, we've done it for the past 5-6 years. We're finding a location. We've done a gallery when it was open. We did Bay Plaza last February. Rich Hill 2 years in a row. We just did one in Jefferson Valley Mall. And we're looking at coming back down to Westchester. Literally, we have our families sign up. We connect with shelters, local organizations, and they sign their families up. They come out and they shop for free. Everything is brand new. We're getting ready for a sneaker giveaway, bomber socks, T-shirts, you name it. We outside because you have to serve the whole child, which is also part of the family, right? We got to make sure everyone is good. And that's
take care of that village.
Yep, exactly.
Like JC said, you buy the neighborhood. That's how you rent it, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's admirable work, obviously, and I love that too because talk about staying in your lane. Like you're doing after school programs, you're doing the therapy, you're doing you're licensed social workers, but you also like doing a sneaker drive and you doing the back to school stuff. And I was gonna show up at your gala. I was almost coming to your gala, by the way. I was gonna surprise y'all. I was in the area because I don't live there anymore, but I was in the area, but I had something at the same time, and I was mad because I wanted to come support.
We have some people in the room. You already know.
I know. Well, there's always next year, But yeah. So I see what y'all doing, and obviously that's why I wanted to talk to y'all. Long overdue. But I'm glad to see this. Now, the most important thing is that nobody will know about this if they don't follow y'all. So what are the socials? What are the ways you have a mailing list? What are the ways that people can be tuned in to what y'all are doing, especially in the upstate, Yonkers, Westchester, wherever y'all really operate,
So we go
regularly.
everywhere. We're definitely not.
I know you'll go. I know that, and also so they can reach out and say, "Hey, come to where we are." So both of those things.
So our organization tag is Teams Under Construction, all one word put together because teams are under construction, right? Building to be better done. Personally, I'm at the Hip Hop Therapist, and yeah.
And so they can follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, for the older heads, Facebook,
That's right.
people on Facebook.
Yeah, I know. It's just like, and Mitchell Robinson for some reason from the Knicks. I don't know why he's an old soul, but it's what it is. All right, dope. So that's how listen, internets, do the job, follow the good folk and get tuned in. If you're not in the area, find a way to bring them to your area. If you can't do that, learn from what they're doing and follow the example. So that's my preach, is that don't tell us that there's nobody out here using hip hop for good. Don't tell us you don't know how to do it. Don't tell us you don't know who to support. Y'all take donations, y'all take tax deductible donations. Come on, let's go.
Yep. So there's deductible receipts.
That's right, 100%. So I appreciate what y'all do. I look forward to crossing paths again in real life. Again, which we did done briefly in the past. And if there's anything y'all are doing, I got my newsletter, I got the show, I got the podcast. I'll walk around the streets with slips of paper to let people know what y'all doing. So anything I can do to spread the word. Is there anything else that you'd like to get across that I might not have covered? Anything you want to point out, or just closing statements?
My closing statement is hip hop turns pain into power and allows you to have a voice. Don't count us out.
And I'll close out with don't allow anybody else to write your story. Your current chapter is not your final chapter.
Okay, bars. All right. Of course, these are like hip hop heads bringing these bars at the end of the show. I appreciate y'all both. Thank you so much for your time and really for your work and dedication to, people, young and old, hip hop, the culture, school, education, and just being down ass folks from the Bronx. That's what's up.
Great.
All right. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Manny Faces. You sick for this one.